In order to benefit all sentient beings, let's aspire for the supreme bodhicitta. So let's continue with the Analects. Why do we need to study this text? In fact, as we stated last class, we've already explained the reason. First off, in our modern world, in fact, we definitely need more teachings on morality, as well as the classical teachings and knowledge. So that's one aspect. But how about for Buddhists? Most Buddhists think that we need to study Buddhist and Bodhisattvas teachings. Why do we need to study Confucius teachings and other worldly knowledge then? In fact, as Buddhists, of course, the most important is to have a firm foundation in Buddhism to understand the five treatises and the teachings in Tantra, in Vajrayana as well. At the same time, we still need to study the worldly knowledge. We need to know how to conduct ourselves in this society and how to then carry out interpersonal relationships. Otherwise, you won't be able to succeed in this world at all. In fact, if you do not have a successful life, you cannot then study the Dharma well. You won't have the abundant opportunity and favorable conditions for studying the Dharma. And even if you could do that, it would be difficult for you to carry out the propagation of Dharma activities. I also taught in other classes, in fact, Buddhism teachings as well as the Confucius teaching and the Taoism teachings. The masters in both Confucius and Taoism teachings, in fact, it is said that the masters are considered as the bodhisattva's manifestation. In the Tripitaka, there is a teaching is called it says that there's this sutra. It says that the three bodhisattvas who are the moonlight bodhisattva, and he was the manifestation of Yan Hui, and Rutong bodhisattva was the manifestation of Confucius, and Kashyapa bodhisattva was the manifestation of Lao Tzu. This sutra is included in Dunhuang and was discovered back in Tang Dynasty, so it is an old scripture of the sutra. Therefore, while we're studying this, it is rather quite reasonable to quote it and to study this text. According to Treatise on the Common End of Myriad Good Deeds, where it says that in Sutra of Origination of the World, the Buddha said that I will send two sages to China to enlighten beings there. One is Lao Tzu, the emanation of Bodhisattva Kashyapa, and the other is Confucius, the emanation of Bodhisattva learned youth. Be aware that since ancient time till the present, all those who are beneficial to the world are all secret emanations of bodhisattvas. So, looking at all the eminent masters in this way, then will be able to view Analects from a different light. In fact, Confucius is an emanation of Bodhisattva learned youth. Mipa Rinpoche has a very thick text. It talks about how to do predictions. And in terms of such predictions, also comes from I Ching, the book of I Ching, as well as Confucius teachings. Therefore, it is quite necessary for Buddhists to study wide and vast. Bodhisattvas would manifest in different forms, in different ways, as eminent masters in front of different types of people. Therefore, we should study this text. Just as the Sutra of Pure Nature of Dharmadhatu, how it is stated that the Confucius teachings, Taoism teachings, as well as Buddhist teachings, they are connected in some ways. It doesn't matter if other religions accept it or not, it doesn't matter that way. This is an opinion, and this is a perspective, and everyone could have different perspectives. And this is our perspective from the Buddhist point of view. So, can you put Lao Tzu or Confucius statues on your shrine? You may ask. Of course, if you are a pure Buddhist who never really had such kind of habit, you don't have to necessarily do that now. Or for people who used to do that before, then it doesn't matter. Just keep doing so, because you can consider them as the manifestation of Bodhisattva, because they ask the people to practice good, and their teachings lasted for 2,000 years, over 2,000 years, in fact, and the teachings are quite profound. So we should have big heart and inclusiveness to accept these teachings. I think this is probably the best way, because now we're in this world that has lots of communications. If we were to conceal ourselves in a rather very narrow-mindedness, it would be very difficult for us to survive in this world. And you will definitely face lots of problems because of such kind of mentality. And according to the Buddha nature aspect of Buddhism, then everyone has Buddha nature. The masters as well as demons, they all have Buddha nature. And when we talk about the four classes of sanghas, there are then also the sanghas who are the sacred sangha, the outer sangha, inner sangha, sacred sangha. So, according to the Tantra and the teaching, then the heretics teachings are also considered as our sangha. So that is why we need to study such knowledge. In total, there are 494 verses, or 494 small chapters, but rather than chapters, they're each sentences. We've already studied one, but we'll see how long it's going to take us to finish studying these 492 teachings. Because I don't have any lineage, I don't hold any lineage, any loan, any or transmission of it. Therefore, I'm not really in danger of breaking my vow of breaking this lineage, and therefore I am just giving teaching as much as I can. In fact, over here, this text includes all kinds of teachings that's given by Confucius as well as his disciples, and it is rather quite scattered, because those are the scattered teachings and later collected by the disciples, so it doesn't really have much of the logic. Some of the teachings includes the morality aspect, some are on the language aspect, some are on the leadership aspect, and some on the culture aspect. So all of these kind of short teachings are on different aspects of life, and it is completely suitable for our modern life as well. What is different, though, is that the 2,500 years ago, this wisdom was applicable then, and it is still applicable now. However, it is just harder for us to apply it. Some people feel that while the words and language is the same, however, if you could then write down lots of the languages, then it could then pass down to different generations. In fact, language could have a different accent, and it could have a different different spoken language, but the written words, the written language is the same. Maybe it sounded very much different back then, but it still makes sense to us now after 2,500 years. Some of the teachings are not really easy to understand, but some, if you are interested in traditional culture, if you're interested in classical writings, then you'll be able to then feel or find yourself very much attracted to such condensed language that is full of profound meaning. Now we're on the second chapter. It says that Master Yuzi is a disciple of Confucius. He is 33 years younger than Confucius, but he is very much honored by the whole crowd. And lots of people ask Yuzi to inherit the teaching position of Confucius. But at that time, Zinzi and there are some other disciples who then disagree with such propose. Anyhow, Yuzi was very much honored and renowned at that time among the disciples of Confucius. So maybe the second chapter that is taught by Yuzi, it has some kind of connection to how Yuzi is honored by the disciples among the Confucius disciples. Other than later part of the chapters where Confucius didn't really appear much, but over here it is still a kind of mix of Confucius teaching, or majority of it is Confucius teaching. So Yuzi started saying that it is rare for a person in fact, lots of professors, and they would disagree with me because they would feel that it should be solely stated by Confucius instead of by also the disciples of Confucius. But I think if you were to agree with Confucius' teaching and thoughts, then you should also agree with the very much honored and renowned disciples' teaching, because they inherit the teachings as well. Not only the teacher has such authority in terms of the thoughts. In fact, the students, the disciples also have such authority, especially the ones who are very much renowned and very much learned. In the Heart Sutra, the Buddha did not really speak. Instead, the Bodhisattva Chenrezig spoke by the blessings of the Buddha. So some of the sutras like that as well. Therefore, the disciples' teachings and the disciples' teachings and the teachers' teachings are not much of a difference, because you cannot then classify, oh, this student is class 1 and the other one is class 2. So it would be rather very difficult for you to then find the essence of the teaching. We can also observe through the teachings, whatever schools it is, the teachings passed down to the lineage disciples. There are students who receive such teaching, and sometimes would even surpass the teachings of their the teacher, such as Vasubandhu and so on. The disciples, in fact, surpass the teachers. Even if they do not surpass the teacher, we should at least accept their thoughts and their teachings as well. So, Master Yu Yuzi said, "It is rare for a person who is filial to his parents and respectful to his elders to be inclined to transgress against his superiors." So, it says that filial is quite important. Why is that? Because if a person who is filial to the parents and respectful and friendly to his elders, this kind of person can hardly be inclined to transgress against his superior. If you are a filial son or daughter to your parents and very kind and friendly to your elders, to your siblings, it is very rare for such a kind of person to then make great chaos in this world. Why is that? Because human beings are beings of habits. If you have received the education of being kind to others and being filial to the parents and being respectful to the others, to the elders, and love the ones who are superior to you, who are equal to you, who are inferior to you, then it will be very rare for such kind of person to make great mistake and to then create chaos and harm to others. When it comes to filial piety, when it comes to respect, people may feel that this is such ancient thinking. How could you be filial to your parents? How could you be complete filial to your parents? Then this is very foolish. In fact, the love and respect towards between parents and children are also two-sided. It is not only one-sided. If the parents are about to conduct something that is harmful, or if the parents do not treat the children very well, if the parents even abuse the children, then of course it is understandable if the child would not apply filial piety to the parents. But such kind of parents are rather quite rare. It has never happened that a person who is not inclined to transgress against his superior is inclined to create a chaos. If a person who respect the superior, such as a lama, then it was very difficult or very rare for such a person to create chaos among the Sangha for or towards the lama. In our world, I think in Tibet is also the same. In Japan, in Korea, it is also the same. That if we were to hire someone, we in fact would observe how this person is, how this person treats his relatives. If this person stays in school, then how this person keeps how is this person in terms of his interpersonal relationships with his with the students and the teachers and so on. If when it comes to marital matters, then people usually would investigate, does this person have money? Does he have house or car? This is how people would then ask first. But what's more important is that how does this person treat his parents? If this person is very nice and respectful to his parents, even if some other requirements does not completely fulfill the list, then this person could still become really successful later on. But if this person is completely opposite, maybe the kind of person who is even successful for one day or two, but without having such a kind of a habit of being filial and respectful to the parents and elders, the kind of person would still then commit or have betrayals and create chaos and so on. So a gentleman looks after the roots. Once you have the roots of filial, have the roots of respect, then the path and with the roots firmly established, then a moral path will grow, a moral way will grow, the way of life will grow. Is it not true then that being filial to one's parents and being respectful to one's elders are the roots of one's humanity? So Ren is humanity, means humanity in English. The most important aspect of Confucius' teachings is humanity and ritual propriety, or a sense of politeness or respect. This word repeated for many times in the Analects of Humanity. Some said 114 times, and some said 109 times. But over here, this sense of humanity could also be translated as love. Does this person have love? Which is very much connected to Buddhism teaching of compassion. Compassion is also a love, but this kind of love is not a love that is only towards oneself, but it is a kind of love that is much more vast, even more vast than the Sravaka and Pratika Buddha's vast love. In fact, this kind of love is based on bodhicitta. So the root is based on filial piety and respect. In fact, lots of people would consider that filial piety is such an old term, and it is not very much fitting to the modern society. If filial piety in Western culture especially, maybe it is very much out of place, because many people would consider that life is ruled by different kinds. Lives are ruled by regulations and laws, but not really depending on love and depending on filial piety and respect. In the Western culture, we talk about reasonable, but in the Eastern culture, we talk about reasonable and fitting to the relationship or interrelationships. So it has to be two aspects. One is that it has to then fit into the interrelationship, and then the other has to fit to the reason. That is why nowadays there are so many young people, especially the Western people, youth, that in fact they do not have such a root of filial piety towards the parents, and that's why they will get quite rebellious in many ways and even rely upon the law to resolve their family issues. But in the East, I think it is quite important that humanity and love and benevolence is more emphasized. Many people, they feel that if it is many people feel nowadays that it is quite important to fulfill their personal needs first, and personal needs comes first, and that's a kind of a Western thinking. And over here in the ancient Eastern wisdom, it talks about how filial piety is in fact really important. It is one of the most important. It is the root. And if you could keep this root firmly established, then everything would naturally become successful. Such as nowadays, corporations, when they're hiring, they would then look at the people, whether they are respectful towards their superiors, their parents, their teachers, and so on. If they can do that, then they would be a good employee. According to Sakya Pandita's teaching, where it says that the jewel on the crown of the Naga king is extremely precious, but no one dare to approach because the Naga king is quite wrathful and breathe out poisonous breath, and that is why nobody would then go approach the Naga king. Just like some people who are very wise, very talented, and knows many things and knows many trades, and very smart, have lots of such merit. But if the person does not have a good personality, does not have a good root, then people are really afraid of getting close to them. So it's for the same reason. Just as young university students, they knows many trades and new skills. They are quite talented and really smart, but once they get into society, step into society out of graduation from university, they first, if they do not know how to build interpersonal relationship, then the corporations do not really want to keep them in their company because they only can create chaos. Previously, the teaching mostly emphasized on the personality, on the characteristic building or education. And then nowadays, I think the teaching is much more emphasized on the knowledge aspect. So I think it's quite necessary for people to contemplate upon such different teachings. So that's the second one. And then the third one talks. The third one says that the master, so Confucius said, a man of clever words, of a pleasing countenance is bound to be short on humanity, and just very short teaching. After one chapter, I'll have a sip, okay? After each chapter. So there are 492 chapters, and then I will sip 492 sips of water. So from the surface of this teaching, it seems that it talks about how a man of clever words is easy to understand. Lots of people are very good at talking. They can then speak of many different ways to support their thesis, their way of speaking, their attitude, their body language, their performance. They will perform at the same time as they talk, and they sometimes be very humorous and really funny. And this kind of person can hardly be loyal, can hardly be full of humanity and love, because they're so good at talking. It is what they're good at, and it'll be very difficult for them to be sincere. Different masters had a different explanation about this teaching. Some said that, in fact, clever words are not necessarily to be negative. It is not of a negative connotation. So over here it says that to be short, it is not that all of them. The clever words are okay as long as you have a genuine humanity within your heart. So you have to have such a sincerity. If you sincerely love others and care for others, then even if you have or do not have clever words, that's not the most important. There are people who do not have lots of expressions or lots of movements. So over here it has two aspects. The first one is that if the person do not place the great emphasis on taming one's own mind, even if the expression or words are clever, then in the long run, this person cannot maintain such kind of a facade and become successful. Therefore, the most important, the key over here is the heart. Building on a kind and loving heart, then clever words and attitude and expressions are important as well. They are they're a bonus to what you want to express. So nowadays, in terms of the service industry, there are trainings where you put a chopstick in your mouth and so that you can smile the best smile. And there are different ways of training you to talk and to communicate with others. The modern corporations, they do not emphasize on how to train the mind, yet they emphasize on how to provide service, or how to give how to provide service with gentleness, such as in Bodhisattva Charyavatara, where it says that even if you're pointing the way or guiding someone to certain place, you should not just use your finger to point. You should rather use your hand palm and use a very gentle way with a good expression, kindly and gently to provide help. Communication is really important. Being kind or not kind in your mind. It's very difficult to tell whether your heart is kind or not, but by their expression, some people would appear to be very angry, very upset. And just by looking at such expression, you may feel that, did that person's father or mother pass away? Is that why that person is feeling really sad? So we should have this kind gaze, kind expression. This is quite important in the society. In the modern research, it says that the tone takes about 7% of the communication, and 38% is the voice, and 55% is the body language. So for people who are going to or planning to go and propagate the Dharma, you should have good expressions, because sometimes expressions, lots of the expressions one expression could destroy your opportunity. Last year, a Kempo who was at a meeting, a Kempo was really smart, but at that time he was folding his arms, and he was wearing a pair of dark shades. And when the leaders came and attend the meeting with him, they were extremely upset. They took a photo and sent it to us. In fact, this Kempo was very happy usually, but of course, in some ways, we understand that he didn't want to be in that meeting, but his expression was too obvious when the authorities came and saw him like that, saw such a simple pose of his, then they felt that it was a disrespectful sign towards the authorities. Therefore, they got extremely angry at him. So I suggest for those of you who are Dharma teachers, who are tutors, the next time you should then give, whenever you give oral presentation, you should use different kind of hand gestures as well as different kind of expressions. If you can do that, in fact, different expressions could bring really good first impression from others. Otherwise, you're just chanting and then run away. That's not really that is not really good. When we talk about Dharma, in fact, we should try to live the Dharma and propagate the Dharma and talk the Dharma and teach the Dharma that surpass the teachings nowadays that is given by the professional presenters. So we should learn such kind of expressions as well as body language. In fact, in Singapore, including many Western countries, during their studies, such as high school and university, they have trainings on how to give interviews as well. I think that's wonderful because nowadays, lots of students, when they first step into society, they were never trained. So I think teachers should then train the students to understand what the society is and then train them how to step into the society. Otherwise, when it comes to a man of clever words, when you take this as a negative connotation, and then you get into an interview and stop talking or talk and talk very rarely. Originally, you're not eloquent already. Then and then you went into the interview with even less speech. I don't think that would be very helpful to you. So what I mean is that the teachers should train the students how to then present themselves, how to make presentations during interviews, and over here, the clever words are not necessarily negative. According to the connected discourse of the Buddha, it says that if one claims to be of the same spirit and wish while actually feels opposed and averse, and takes no delight in conducting the same, it can be known that such one is a bad companion. So sometimes we meet such friends that they don't want to do something, therefore they push such task to you, and they feel something, but they speak of the opposite. And such kind of friend is not a good friend. So you should not have only clever words, but not a kind heart. According to Sakya Pandita's Treasury of Good Advice, where it says that to say one thing but mean another, such one is a cunning man, but also a fool pretending to be a learned. Sometimes there are people who then come to me and say that I've heard so much about you, I've always wanted to meet you. In fact, this kind of people there are quite a lot of such kind of people in the society. Sometimes it is because of their jobs, sometimes it's because of their status. Therefore, they had to live in this world, and then they pretend and cover up themselves. Of course, it is not to encourage you to speak exactly what you're thinking. That is on the other side of the extreme. So, clever words sometimes are important. But Confucius said that the person with clever words and of pleasing countenance is very rare to be found in the crowd of men with humanity. So in terms of Buddhists, I think it's quite important to watch for your own speech, to watch for your expression. Over here, the clever words and the pleasing countenance means that you are saying one thing but mean another, and pretending to be smiling in front of others when you do not feel happy inside. In such a way, you must feel lots of suffering inside. There are people who do not like laughing at all, and then if you see them trying to put on a smile, then it could look quite awkward. Inner compassion, inner love is more important than anything. In fact, when you have such a compassionate heart and love, even if you're scolding others with such a mind, then that's good. There are people who are very good at their language. They would then they're very good at selling, very good at making service, and they would make it just as if you do not buy this piece of clothing, then it's such a big loss for you in your whole life, and you will regret after for a long, long time. And then, as a customer, whenever you hear such long encouragement of purchasing, you feel a sense of compassion for them. After all, they've been talking for so long, therefore they usually would make a sale anyhow. And there are people often talk about the negative aspect. They would talk about only the negative things. The disciples are really bad, the sanghas are really bad, the teachers really bad. And then when people hear such kind of language, then they would feel this is too complicated, and there's no way to get into this sangha to study. So according to the two codes of conduct, where it is stated by Mipa Rinpoche, he said that the majority of foes and friends are created by language. Therefore, we need to be very careful with our language. So we finished the third one. Now the fourth. The fourth one is Master Zen. Zenzi is rather quite humble one. He's not really good at language. It is said that he is about 46 years junior than Confucius. So from these two important disciples, we can see Confucius has lots of young disciples. He has much younger generation. He's very much he cultivates lots of the younger generation. According to the great learning. Well, Master Zenzi, his name is Zenshin, and he said that every day I examine myself on 3 points. When I worked to benefit someone else, did I do my best? In my relationship with my friends, did I fail to be trustworthy? Did I pass on any knowledge I myself had not put into practice? So, have I then examined myself on 3 points, or rather sometimes it is explained as 3 times. Some said also it is have I examined myself many times? So 3 is rather just a number shows 3 shows many. And then when I worked to benefit someone else, did I do my best? Was I loyal to my friends? That's the other explanation of it. Sometimes it also means that did I do my best? There are people who said that, oh, no problem, I'll do it. But then there's no conclusion coming from such words, from such promise. So it means that once you make a promise, did you do your best to fulfill your promise? The second thing that you investigate or you examine on yourself is that in my relationship with my friends, did I fail to be trustworthy? The other day I said, people have weakness. Sometimes you feel that you're trustworthy, but when we examine such trustworthiness with logic and analysis, you should really examine yourself in such a way. You should examine yourself with Buddhist teaching if you were a Buddhist. If you or Chinese classical text student, you should then examine yourself according to the traditional teachings. So it says that have you then carried out your promise by trying your best? And the second one is that are you trustworthy? Are you sincere? So the third one is that have I put the knowledge into practice, the teachings that's given by my teacher? Another way of explaining it is that the teachings that I pass on to other people, to my students, to my disciples, have I practiced those on myself? Because if I did not practice them before, then such words are just empty words. If I did not practice them first myself. So the three things that's have I then fulfilled my promise by doing my best? Have I or was I trustworthy? And the third one is, did I practice what I've learned? So some kind of languages then can be applied into our Buddhist life as well. Did I practice what my Lama taught me? Was I trustworthy to my Sangha? In fact, in Buddhism, when we talk about examine ourselves on 3 points, it means that at the 3 times, in the morning, at noon, and in the evening, with right mindfulness, we should then watch our mind to examine our thoughts, to examine our actions, to examine our words. Have I been beneficial to sentient beings? Have I practiced diligently? So all of these could be very much applicable to even Buddhists. Modern people talks about how the 3 points are, then you should examine yourself whether you fulfill the elements of being beautiful, being rich, and being famous. So the modern people have a rather different take or spin on this. Anyhow, I think what you should examine yourself is that how are you doing in terms of your practice, in terms of your lifestyle, your meal, and your studies, and so on. So all of these. I think these ancient teachings are not really on any of the menial things in our life. Rather, it is on the introspective aspect. When you look into yourself, when you make such introspective observation, even if you made a mistake, through such introspective observation, you would feel a sense of regret, but at the same time, confidence to correct such a mistake that you've made. However, in the West, it is more based on the culture of original sin that has lots of burden, rather. That's more of the Western culture's perspective. Anyhow, I think to watch ourselves, to observe ourselves and examine ourselves is quite important. Sometimes there are people who, sometimes people could get into some pattern and they do not realize that they're in this pattern of thinking. Although sometimes they feel that what they're doing is very reasonable, but because they're so involved in their own pattern, they could get completely lost. It could be the power, it could be wealth, and so on. You could get lost when you have lots of fame, lots of wealth, and lots of praise. So people with wisdom, when you're at high, when you're at low points of your life, you would then maintain a sense of humility at the same time, confidence and humbleness to maintain who you are without getting lost by any of the external phenomena. I think in terms of this, in the chapter of right mindfulness in Bodhicharyavatara, it is taught quite extensively. Sometimes even one day of mistake could then create a mistake that you would feel regret for a whole life. So examining yourself is quite important. Some visa students who went abroad for studying, and then they would feel rather quite arrogant and completely lost themselves by the foolish friends as well as other people's meaningless praises. According to Trukinimus or some other teachings, it says that at certain points, people would get blind or lost in the mistakes that they make. That is why people from ancient time, they often examine their three gates, their body, speech, and mind. So this is quite important to remember. Now the fifth one. Now Confucius said it is more on the leadership and politics. It says that in guiding a state of 1,000 chariots, handle all matters with care and respect, and be trustworthy. Take a measured approach in your spending and cherish the people. Employ the common people only at the right time. So a country that has a state of 1,000 chariots and soldiers, and many soldiers. At that time, in the history, in fact, the so-called country is just like the county that we have nowadays, or a village even. So it says that if you're a leader of such a state, then you should be aware of this 5 or sometimes as 3 things. The first one is handle all matters with care and respect. Whatever you're doing, all the matters should be carried out with care, with lots of meticulous care, instead of feeling rather lazy and not really caring about anything. The next one is be trustworthy. In this society, to have such kind of trust is quite important. If a country and a country do not have trust, it could create a war. And if a family and family do not have such trust, then they would also have some fights. Same as people between family member, and people and people. So without trust, harmony is really far-fetched. That is why in Buddhism we talk about trustworthy, we talk about devotion and faith. Because without such, you won't be able to maintain a harmonious relationship and you won't be able to receive knowledge properly. So, such trust is quite important. Wisdom and capacity and trust is really important. And next one is to take a measured approach in your spending, in the food, the clothing, and whatever you have, your wealth. You should not then squander those. And the next one is cherish the people. Cherish the people as if they are your only child. And the fifth one is employ the common people only at the right time. At the right time. Around that time, the people in fact rely heavily on farming. Therefore, if an emperor asks his people to work for him instead of farming, then that is not the right time. So as a leader, as an emperor, they should definitely take the right opportunity to command the people. As a leader, first of all, you should be very careful and have respect towards handling all the matters. Second of all, you need to be trustworthy to all of the people, and the third one is to have a measured approach in your spending. You do not try to have a luxury lifestyle by spending money or squandering the money. The next one is cherish the people. There are people who have status, who to cherish the people, take care of your employees, and then employ the people only at the right time. Sometimes nowadays in modern time, in fact, in this time, people are really busy. Therefore, it is quite necessary to care for other people's time and their energy and so on. Sometimes I really want to teach. Sometimes I get so enthusiastic with my teaching, but I try my best to maintain the meeting time within an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes or so. Because I know that nowadays, the modern time, people are quite busy with your own work and you have to get up early and so on. Therefore, I try to then control myself and not to get too enthusiastic about giving teaching. Unlike me, lots of the masters, when they host meetings and have meetings and so on, they have hours and hours long of meetings. That is, in fact, quite exhausting. Some teachers that I've met in my school, they are quite eloquent. They can talk for a long period of time. So for people who are quite eloquent, who loves talking, they should know when to stop. They should learn how to condense the information into short languages and express it. That's quite important. So this content is quite important. I think nowadays the masters are getting better and some of them are not, and they kept on nagging. Maybe this is not a good metaphor. Anyhow, there are people who are so eloquent, they feel that they're very good at giving teaching, but not for the audience. For 3 and 4 hours of giving a talk or presentation for 3 or 4 hours, maybe they feel quite fulfilled, but not for the audience. hours. So it is quite important to control the time. The second aspect is that as a leader ruling a country and a state, it has it has the five guidelines. It's very similar to the two codes of conduct or the Just King, where it says that compassionate ruler love their subjects as they would in an only child. They care for their followers even at the cost of their own wealth and life. In fact, what I notice is that lots of people, once they gain authority, once they gain status, higher status, their attitude and their way of treating others completely transform afterwards. So I think this one should be memorized by leaders. You should not just treat others by saying that I'm your leader, you should follow me. Lots of the emperors in the Chinese drama, the TV shows, usually sit on their throne and then people would prostrate to him. In fact, I don't think that's the best way of leadership. I think the best way of leadership should take oneself as a servant or providing a service to others. And that's really the best way of leadership. So as a leader, you should have compassion and love towards their subjects as they would an only child. Lots of a single child, even if they are really naughty, the parents are still would still express their love and compassion towards them. Just like that, the leaders should also care for their subjects or their employees or whomsoever works for them. Just like a mother would care the most for a sick child, therefore a leader should care the most for the subject who has the most afflictions or has the most troubles.
他这里也是自喻啊，就是说是这个低兹如小者，如则孝，出则弟啊，就是出则悌。他这里在家里，就是在家里的这个时候呢，就是应该要这个孝顺啊，就是对父母孝顺。那么就是出门的时候呢，就是对这个兄弟啊、姐妹啊，或者是对他人啊，就是对朋友的话呢，就是应该有这种爱，就是忠诚的这种爱。敬而信呢，反爱重啊。那么就过后的话呢，就是应该在自己的身口意要谨慎，就是要有这种信任，还有呢就是反爱重，就是要有一种宽宏的这种心态来，就是爱这个所有的人吧。就是他这里重视不一定是众生，就是不然儒家文化当中也是爱这个天下无边的一切众生的话，那有点，但是表面上看呢是爱众，就是没有说爱这个人，所以说他这个反爱众吧，就是反爱众是还是对那个天下的所有的人呢，就是都要有一种爱来对的。而亲近是要亲近，就是这个善知识；亲真就是好的老师。然后心有余力，则以学问啊。那如果有这个因为前面是这个做人的这个基本的基础，如果有了这些的话，那就是有其他的这个能力来，可以呢就是这个学问。所以从这里呢可以看得出来是什么呢？就是做人的这个基础就是很重要。就古人呢，他把这个孝顺啊、精神啊、爱众啊。这些很重要。然后呢，依着一个很好的老师呢，就开始这个学知识。但现在时代是完全不相同的。现在是什么样呢？所有的这个时间，所有的精力呢，全部用在这个学知识上面。然后做人的这个基础也好，孝顺也好，这些方面呢， 家里也从来都是不重视，然后学校也是从来都不重视，以前都是这个代测什么这个就是德才兼备啊，就是德和这个才都要居住的。现在呢，唯一的重视什么呢？就是他的这个才华和技能啊，就这是确实有时候现在各个地方啊，就是办一些什么这个什么这个补习班呐、就是兴趣班呐、什么我们这些地方的话呢，就是办一些网络班呐、等等等。但是每一次就是这些补课和这个补班，就这些的话呢，就是费用也特别高，就是一节课都是好几百块钱。现在学习真的很痛苦的，很多人都是用钱来买这个知识。可是你学了，就是学什么这个英语啊，学技术啊，学很多知识，但学完了以后呢，其实是他没有这个基础，就是这是很可悲的事情。家里呢从来也不教这个孝顺的这个道理，也不会就是爱这个众生和爱我们这个所有的这种人类啊，包括就是这个为人处事、做接人待物等等这些知识呢，就老师也不教，老师整天都是讲一些课本上的就是所谓的就是知识。那这个知识呢，就是最后真正是在社会上是做到什么样的这个事呢，就是很难。就是因此，我们这个社会啊，就是现在是也是实际上是学到这个西方的一些这个文化，西方的话呢，也是知识非常的这个重视。那么这个品德也好，就是他的这个道德的话呢，基本上是以这个法律作为这个一个规则啊，就是只要不犯法的话呢，人
In
就
the
是这样
West,
就
they
可以。
only talk
但是我刚
about
才讲
the,
的样这
using
样
the
的话呢，
law
好像
as
我们这个师徒之
as a
间的
way
关
to
系，
regulate
然后
regulate
这个
people.
子女之间的
However,
关系，本来都是有一种爱，有一种
when it
尊敬，
comes
有
to
一
love
种
and
这
respect
种感
and
情，
so
但
on,
这种感情呢，
all
就是
of
从
these
小的
kind of
基础上
interpersonal
就是淡化了，
relationships
就是没有它。
are
没有这
rather
样的话呢，
quite
我们人与人之间的关系其实光讲一
weakened,
个
and
内涵
people
是
do
不行
not
的，有些
take
时候呢，
importance
确实
of
需
such
要
kind
这
of
个情啊。
relationships.
你看我们有些时候，有
If
些
you
时候的
only
话呢，就完
emphasis
全是一种规
emphasize
则的
on
话
the
呢，就是规
reasoning
则
and
根本没
laws
办法
and
解决一些
regulations,
主观的这个
there are
问题。
many
这些主
things
观
that
的问题
cannot
呢，
be
可能在
resolved
现
by
在
such
的
regulations.
社
Lots
会
of
上呢，
objective,
缺少
lots of the
我们缺
subjective
少爱，
matters
缺少
cannot
道
be
德，缺少品
resolved
行，
by
缺少
law.
孝顺。这样的这种
That
社会的话呢，
kind
到
of
最后
lack or
人都
gap
变成
between
像
the
鸡一样
regulation
就
and
每个人的思想方
emotions
面就是一
and
除了利益关系以外的
between
话呢， 互相的也没有什么，只
the
要有利益
regulations then can be
对
resolved
就
through
如果没有
through
没有什么这个利益
characteristic
的话，
building.
那就什么所谓的我昨天讲的所谓的什么感恩也好，或者说是这
So
个
gratitude
报恩也好，就是这些都是根本
and
不用
repaying
所以
kindness,
说
all
有
of
时候
these
这
kind
个
of things
怎么想，就
are
现在的这个
not
社会当中呢，千万不能有
cherished in our
这
society.
个报恩，就是只要是
So that's why I said yesterday, in our modern
这样
society,
的话可能是
in
自己
fact,
心态也可能比较
you
虚
should
这
not
也是我的一种
ask for
技能
people or
就是
expect
我觉得是
people
很多
to
人的话呢，
repay
只
your
要是
kindness.
你对别人是怎么样的话，那就是只要不忘回的话，那就好好好
Your
好过
very
就
basic
非
or
常非常不
principal
错了。然后你
expectation
要在
from
这个
others
别人这
is
个身
that,
上有
well,
所
as long
任何一
as
件事情的
that
话，
person's not
没有什么
returning
这
my
个细节
kindness
只
by
要有
harmful action towards me,
跟
then I feel
好
really
这一点
happy,
世
grateful.
界呢也是跟
If
以前虽然我们的这个文化经上是有这些，确实很珍贵啊，人并不是机器
in
人，
fact,
人并不
our
是动物，就是应该像动物的
classical
话呢，就是这个
classics have
父母亲
such
还是有一
important
点的。我的
teaching.
那个院子里面有
And
一群乌鸦，就是我觉得是他们还是
I
很
think
特别
the
就经常
I
观
think
察
as
他们的
human
这个家
beings,
庭
we're
关系，然后他
and
们
the
都
being
还是
human
这
is
个
much
有
much
时候就
more
是
than
来一
being
些
an,
这个
a
敌人的时
robot
候
or
呢，
so
就是
on.
他们一起来
When
这
I
个
watch the
对抗。
family
然后
of
有来个客
crows
人的
on
时
my
候呢，
roof,
什么这个
sometimes
跟远方来的，
they are
就是他们
happy,
还是
sometimes
也是
they
比较热情招待
they
的。
fight
所
with
以
each other.
有时候我
So
们
there's
人
a
呢，
group
就
of
是有时候
crows
也不知道
who
怎么样，凡是我希望的事
live
情呢，还
around
是
my
作为人的话
roof.
呢，就是要
They
讲
have
究
such
亲
kind
密
of a
这
connection
个
and relationship.
不管现在的
Then
文化什么样，就是叫
how
有
about
亲
us
有
as
义
human
有血
beings?
有肉，还有我们这个心呐，就是
Nowadays,
除
what
了
we
我们这
say
个
is
血
that
肉
we
以外，
have
里面还有
flesh,
一个
we
就是
have
如来藏，如来藏
blood,
的
and
这
we
个
have
东西，
feelings.
抱歉
And
我再
beyond that, we have
好，
Buddha
今天讲到这
nature,
里。
we have mind. So that's what I want to address.